Good morning. We will continue reading The River of Light, The Life of Expression by Mark Nepo, Part 1, The Chord in a Heart. Art is the passing of feelings from one human heart to another, by Leo Tolstoy. As a tuning fork, an artist listens to a song in the heart and creates from that, by Robert Henry. From the moment we are born, life begins to carve us into an instrument. How we are carved by experience and how living puts us in touch with the common, eternal chord that rings at the bottom of every heart is what chapters in this section explore. I begin with my own journey. I started writing in high school after my first love dumped me. I was devastated. Though I wasn't a loner, I didn't have any close friends, not yet. So I started talking to myself as a way to heal. Once on the mend, I realized I wasn't just talking to myself. I had begun a conversation with the universe. As an undergraduate, I was discouraged from writing creatively in the English department, but a kind theater professor, Doc Palmer, took me under his wing and told me that if I became a theater major, he could take care of me. I began by writing plays. That was part of our agreement. I'd sign up for his courses, though he'd give me some different assignments. Instead of a paper on Oedipus Rex or Hedda Gabler, he'd invite me to write specific scenes modeled after the great playwrights. I also had to partake in every aspect of theater, from set design to acting. Then this unexpected apprentice had stayed with me. Two inherent lessons from theater inform all my writing. First, the theater axiom, show, don't tell, by which we give the evidence of an experience, not our conclusion of it. And secondly, the very premise of all theater, whereby the play physically and emotionally stands naked between the playwright and the audience. Where intellectual writing can cover the work or keep it at a distance, or even hold it behind the author, this can't be done with plays or isn't a play. These theater principles are in the bones of all my work, regardless of the form. I think my writing is more accessible and better for it. Yet, I did have a moment of epiphany in which I knew I was a poet, though I had written very little. As a 19-year-old, I was coming off the top of a hill in Cortland, New York. I was heading towards the college down below when a wind rushed at the back of my head and off my cheeks into the space before me. I stopped and watched. It gushed across the valley, watched as the same clear wind swept through the trees on the distant hill. Somehow, in the moment, an intuitive way that defied logic, I knew I was a poet. I think I understood the reach. Early on, I realized that being a poet was mostly about being an awakened human being, which in turn mostly was living each day as a tuning fork in the midst of life's current. As a young poet, I would stumble into a vision, or a trip into a metaphor, or a glimpse of truth, and be stopped by a deep question. Then I'd reach for expression after expression in an effort to capture each of them. Of course, I'd inevitably miss because the only things worth saying were unsayable. So I'd try again and miss again. I would get frustrated and press myself, trying to capture the original vision 5, 6, 7 times. Why couldn't I express what I was seeing and feeling? Why was I always missing? These things were so clear to me, and yet I couldn't render them accurately. What was I doing wrong? Now, years after cancer, I have been forced to accept the inevitable refraction of expression that can only approximate the ineffable. This has led me to thank the unsayable for bestowing me with these 5, 6, or 7 attempts, poems that I never would have retrieved if not for the glow of what can't be said. Now I say with gratitude, look what the unsayable has given to me. It has squeezed these precious drops of insight through me into being. Now, I accept that the original vision is never meant to be captured, but it is a shimmering conduit through which we can only retrieve expressions that might point to all that is unsayable, that might reveal all the ways we are connected, that might pay tribute to the web of essence that informs existence. Along the way, I came to understand that the tuning fork is our heart, and letting life strike the chord in our heart helps to elevate our suffering and inner sense of burden. The Hindu poet Rabindranath Tagore conveys this beautifully using the image of an Indian instrument known as a veena, which is like a sitar. I'm in search of a veena player. I have tried east and I have tried west, but have not found the player of my quest. They are all experts. They can make strings resound to a degree. They command high prices. But for all their wonderful execution, they can't strike no chord in the heart. At last, I came across one whose very notes melt away my sense of oppression within. And this playing is the fire of joy, which can light up all other hearts in its touch. When the chord in our heart is struck, we resonate with all living things and with the resources that sustain the universe. When we give ourselves over to the epic sharing of truth and tenderness that arise from the resonance, it becomes so much more than writing. It opens a window into the mystery, which shows itself ever so briefly after so much human toil to open that window. To open in this way requires us to be honest, accepting, and loving. Through such courage, we can remove the veils that cover us, long enough to stir our hearts into wakefulness. In AD 905, the Japanese Emperor Daigo commissioned the first imperial anthology of poetry, known as the Kokinshu. When it was completed in AD 920, one of the poet editors, Ki no Tsurayuki, wrote an introduction that has become one of the most reliable descriptions of poetry and the effort to make meaning of our experience. It speaks to the chord in our heart, which, when struck, lets us know we are alive. Poetry in Japan begins with the human heart, as its seed and myriad words as its leaves. It arises when people are inspired by what they see and hear to give voice to the feelings that come forth from the multitude of events in their lives. The singing of warblers in the blossoms, the voices of frogs in the pond, these all teach us that very creature on earth sings. It is this song that effortlessly moves heaven and earth, evokes emotions from invisible gods and spirits, harmonizes the relationships of men and women, and makes serene the hearts of brave warriors. 22 years ago, I began the book of the awakening when freshly on the other side of cancer, as a way to give back by trying to strike the chord in our heart, by trying to offer small doses of what matters for people tangled in the majesty of living, struggling, loving, and dying. My hope was to provide a form of inner food. I was amazed at how the daybook had been pliable and thoroughly used form in many lay communities, in cancer rooms, recovery rooms, and support groups. I saw daybooks bent and folded everywhere, in the back seat of cars, left on park benches, and on countless bedstands. I thought, if I could fill this form, I might create something of use. It took 2 years to gather all the entries, and another year to imagine the meditations, and one more year to order the entries and revise them. Then the book began its way in the world. Since that time, I have come to believe that the heart of awakening is the quietly courageous act of feeling what is ours to feel and facing what is ours to face. And I have discovered along the way that writing, expressing, is one of the best ways to stay awake. It doesn't matter how good our expressions are, but they keep us in the relationship to the larger universe we are part of. When the chord in our heart is struck, we resonate with all the living things with the resources that sustain the universe. The inner experience of truth. Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. Aristotle. I have always felt most alive when telling the truth, when the sudden utterance from within, be it a question or a feeling, rings through the entirety of me. And though I have an insight and understanding, I realize now in my 60s that it is really the experience of truth, the empowerment of authentic, that has kept me going. While uttering the truth or questioning the truth, an electricity is turned on that connects us to the immeasurable vastness so close, but always out of view. When experiencing truth, especially the truth of feeling, I feel most like a dolphin breaking the surface only to dive. The affirming thing about such moments is that they are wonderfully contagious. In a room full of skeptics, one truthful utterance can shift the entire ground of dialogue, even if no one else dares to say a word. As a young man, I had no idea of any of this, any more than a hawk is aware in an aerodynamics. Now, I can see that this desire not be alone in truth seeking and truth speaking is what made me want to be a teacher. I really didn't want to talk about anything outside of truth. I wanted to examine everything by sharing, reflecting, and questioning whatever I would meet through the lens of authentic feelings. With the exception of a few friends, I couldn't find such companionship readily in the world. And so, without realizing it, I began to write and teach in order to create a sacred place where the experience of honest truth could happen. This very quickly necessitated my introducing my students to the vastness of view and to the experience of authentic feeling, so we could enter the sacred place together. I have also learned that each time we experience truth, each time we suffer or love, the range of our compassion widens. Like a mud filled pipe that is hollowed out by rain to carry water underground, the force of each experiences clears us out. Listening, expressing, and writing are conscious ways to clear ourselves out and to expose and extend the range of what we feel. And so, the poet or artist in us is that deep part of who we are that keeps extending the range of our compassion. Throughout history, those afraid of life or feelings have underdetermined their power and dismissed their rightful role in experiencing truth. For much of life, I have been called a romantic, which is true, but not complete. It is like defining the sea by its surface. Romantic is a term that has been diminished through years. Today, it denotes a sentimental outlook on life fueled by unwarranted optimism. At heart, though, it has always been an outlook that assumes there's something larger than the individual. All the energy surrounding such a view arises from a belief in the interconnectedness of all life and experience of wholeness. At its core, Romanticism suggests that we become whole through inwardness, by feeling and inhibiting our inner escape, and Jared Manley Hopkins calls it feeling it all, as the German poet Goethe says. I would suggest that a mature romantic is someone who accepts the hard realities of life, as well as the unseen connections that knit all aspects of reality together. The great Polish poet Milosz was, in my view, a mature romantic. He was accurate and realistic about terrible hardships he experienced and witnessed growing up during the Holocaust. Yet, from under all that, even in his darkest poems, there is a light emanating, informed by something larger than what any individual can go through or bear witness to. This is what a mature romantic commits to, a devotion to the truth of living, while never diminishing or giving up the majesty of life that holds the messy turbulence of truth. I am deeply romantic in that I believe feelings are the threshold of spirit. I also believe deeply in the act of expressing and how it helps us move toward being whole and complete. In our experience of truth, perceiving, feeling, thinking, and expressing are all the parts of lifelong process that is equivalent to inhaling and exhaling. Some of us develop our abilities to feel, see, and hear more deeply than others. Though I believe we are all born with the same capacities, some of us are distracted by the noise of the world, even hypnotized by it, while some of us are tossed below the noise, hearing the frequencies the rest of us have yet to access. Consider how dogs hear well beyond the range of human hearing. In California, it's been reported that dogs have heard the beginnings of earthquakes before seismographs could register their initial tremor. In just this way, there are those of us who have the ability to feel, see, and hear is beyond our normal range of compassion. We call them empaths or psychics, and we often discredit them because what they know appears to be beyond what we can sense. The poet in us not only committed to the deepest form of feeling, seeing and hearing, but also committed to learning from those who feel, see, and hear more deeply. Let me share a story about this deeper kind of hearing. A dear friend emailed me one day in winter from a beach halfway around the world. She ended by asking what my definition of poetry was. It was early. I was at my desk. The house was quiet, and I looked at the ice over trees I know so well. I was touched that she would ask and wasn't sure how to put into words something so essential and invisible that I have devoted my life to uncovering it. Yet this unnameable quest is poetry. How friends search for truth across the miles, years is poetry. How we discover truth through our ongoing conversation together is poetry. After consulting the trees, I wandered my way through a cup of tea to this poem that I had sent her. You ask about poetry. You ask from an island so far away it remains unspoiled, to walk quietly till the miracle in everything speaks in poetry. You want to look for poetry in your soul and in everyday life, as you search for stones on the beach. 4,000 miles away, as the sun ices the snow, I smile. For in this moment, you are the poem. After years of looking, I can only say that searching small things worn by deep is the art of poetry. But listening to what they say is the poem. Months later, my friend wrote me again. I'm in the South Pacific as I write, watching the waves break gently on shore. I think of each of us as a ripple in the sea that is life. We believe we are all so different, but we are not. We cover ourselves in customs and costumes of aspirations, struggle, and victory, sacrifice and loss, and soon forget who we really are. Lately, I have been asking God, please show me who I really am, because I want to make sure I never lose the sight of the truth of my existence. I'm a ripple in the ocean of God, and I want to be able to see my reflection in the face of everyone I meet, to understand that even people I will never know are reflections of my disguised self. We are, at once, individuals and ripples in the sea that is life, and the want to know who we really are and to know the truth of our existence are, to me, the fundamental life giving questions that the heart commits to once opened by love or suffering. This all makes me want to share a small ritual I do every time I finish swimming. I slip into a smaller therapy pool filled with warm water, float my backhand with my arms spread and my ears submerged so I can hear my own breathing. I softly recite this small poem of mine. My life. I am a fish in search of bottom. When I surface in search of surface, when I bottom, and the ribbon of God's sea passing through my gills is what I feel and think and speak. I think the work of all poetry is to have us live on the inside of truth, so we can accept that everything is alive. The gift of all poetry is to listen to what everything has to say. Each time we experience truth, each time we suffer or love, the range of our compassion widens. Thank you.